Good evening. We're going to have a rather intimate discussion tonight. I'm very excited to be here with Jai Hobbs. I'm Genevieve. I'm the events manager at Where the Wild Things Are, and we're pleased to be doing this in correspondence with our grown-up bookstore, Avid Reader. Very excited to be talking about FLY, Financially Literate Youth. And before we begin, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from where I'm broadcasting from. I'm in the land of the Yagara and Turrbal people, and I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Tonight, you will be here with Jai chatting about his new handbook. And if you haven't yet purchased a copy, we're very pleased to be able to offer you 10% off your copy for tonight. Just use the code EVENT. I'll send you through the link for the book shortly. And anything you purchase from our website tonight, you'll also get that 10% off for. I think after Jai has presented some of his work and his thoughts, we will open up to open questions where you're welcome to just speak to us and chat. But in the meantime, if you have any thoughts throughout it, just send them through to me in the chat function and we can save them up and ask them either as we go if it suits or closer to the end. But now I would like to introduce to you our speaker for this evening, Jai. So Jai has written this book in collaboration with his partner, Marlies. They're a wife and husband team, originally from Cairns and now based in Noosa. Marlies is an ex-property development lawyer with a passion for education and creative projects, and Jai is a mortgage broker with over 15 years experience. They have two sons, Troy and Zach, and I think some horses with pretty great names.
Yeah, two horses.
Together, they have built more than 10 properties, started, owned, and operated several businesses, including a mortgage brokerage, retail shop and cafes, a franchise company, online shop, a ready-made meal business, and property developments. Having journeyed through the highs and lows with backgrounds in law, finance, business, health, property, and most proudly of all, parenthood, they have a passion to help educate and inspire future generations to soar into life after school and make confident, informed financial decisions. Welcome, Jai. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thanks, Genevieve, and welcome. And thank you to the people that are on tonight. So we're going to keep it, I suppose, a little bit informal. I'm going to give you a bit of a discussion today about what FLY is all about, where it came from, and just some little key points in the books that I think are good takeaways. So first of all, like I said, thanks for attending. Thanks for your time. We will have a question time at the end. So as Genevieve said, if you've got any questions, please feel free. Don't hold back. Ask as many as you like. There's no such thing as a silly question. And hopefully you can stump me and I need to go away and get some info and come back to you. So just a little introduction. As Genevieve said, I'm originally from Cairns. I live on the Sunshine Coast now. Got into the finance industry basically through falling into it. So like most people, I went through high school not having a clue of what I wanted to do. I went to school to really eat lunch and play football. Both of those I did very well. The school work, I had no idea. So I started the industry in the marine, started my working industry in the marine life, did some diving, driving boats, and then fell into finance because I had a little bit of interest in it through school, but quickly realized marine for me probably wasn't going to be the long-term lifespan. So starting in finance, I really started to understand how little people knew. And I read a book that most of you have probably heard called Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was 18, and that changed my life. So the concept that he introduces in that book changed my thinking and certainly set the path of where we went down. So I was in the finance or mortgage broking industry initially from 2005 up till 2013. I was self-employed at 22, so that was probably a little bit of youthful exuberance and overconfidence at the time, but that led us down into the industry that I'm in. Marlies and I started another business called Paleo Cafe and franchised that out to 18 franchises around Australia and international. So with that came a lot of more learnings, more lessons, but also some more knowledge that we helped develop the book. I went back into the finance industry at the start of 2016 because I realized that food, while I love eating it, is not a passion of mine in preparing it. The business side definitely is, but finance and property is really where the passion lies. So Fly came about through the idea of wanting to give back. So we wanted to give back through our mortgage business or through our finance business, but didn't want to blindly give money away to a charity and not really understand or have any control over where it went or how it was spent. So the idea was initially to go into schools and give presentations and hand out handbooks to students that were leaving grade 11 and 12 to better prepare them for the things that we wish that we would have learned before we left school. We quickly realized that it would take a lot of peddling, a very long time, and a lot of resource to try and get that out around Australia. So that hence the idea of the book or the handbook, so that was more readily available to more people, and that people could refer back to it. So rather than just something that was a once-off read, put on the shelf and forget about, we really wanted it to be a handbook that people could not essentially read cover to cover. You don't have to read it cover to cover, but look at the contents page and flick to the part that is relevant to you at the time. So that's where it came about. That's where the passion lies. We've got two kids, two boys ourselves. They're 6 and 9 at the moment. They're good fun, but they're an absolute handful. And setting them up and giving them the good head start in life financially that we wish we would have had when we started is obviously a big driver for us, and we hope we can give that resource to as many parents as we possibly can. So before we get too much into Fly, I'd just like to share a video with you on Fly and what it's all about. So I'll just share my screen. Cool. There it goes. Oh. Come on. All right.
JFK wisely said, "The future promise of any nation can be directly measured by the prospects of its youth." In 2018, the University of Melbourne revealed less than 25% of young people aged 17 to 24 could accurately answer 5 questions on financial literacy. In 2019, Deloitte Global Millennial Survey found more than half of millennials globally think their financial situations will worsen or stay the same. This is what Australia's young people face today, and it's time to break the trend. Fly is a handbook and reference guide like no other. It is designed to arm young people with financial knowledge and literacy to set themselves up for success as they chart the course of their life and avoid costly mistakes. Fly has been created by 3 parents who are experts in finance, law and journalism, empowering readers with the information they need in one convenient and credible resource, allowing them to make informed decisions and spread their wings as they embrace life after school. Let's help our youth fly. Visit www.financiallyliterateYouth.com.au to find out more.
So that's just a little bit about what Fly is all about, and some things that are possibly covered in there. So I just want to touch on a few of those alarming statistics, and this was a big driver for us and why we wrote it, especially if the youth these days are coming out of school, just about to enter the workforce. Some of the things that they're facing. So as I said, half of millennials globally think their personal financial situation will worsen or stay the same in the year ahead. Now, that was in 2019. That was pre-COVID. So I probably think that is a little bit worse these days. Less than 25% of young people could accurately answer 5 questions on financial literacy. Household debt to income ratio currently stands at 190%. Housing affordability is on the decline, and that's probably definitely been escalated in the last 12 months with property prices, especially in the southeast corner. Property prices are going gangbusters at the moment. If you're in the market, it's fantastic. If you're not in the market, it's starting to get a little bit daunting. And those aged between 15 to 24 are seeking an unemployment rate of 3 times the national average when they hit the employment market. So if you're a youth, you're probably looking at those statistics and thinking, I'm stuck. What am I going to do? And while there's a little bit of hurdles, there's also a hell of a lot of opportunity. So the opportunity these days, and I suppose the biggest thing that the youth can do, or anyone can do really for that matter, is give yourself some education on your own finances. That doesn't mean you have to be a finance guru. It just means you need to understand the basics. So some of those basics that it's not that complex, and no one, unfortunately, in the finance industry, there's a lot of sharks that go on with it. No one cares more about your situation than you. Yeah, humans naturally, we're afraid of the unknown. So we tend to run away things or block out things that we don't know about rather than seek out information to make sure that's better. And also what you focus on, you attract. So if you're focusing on there's never enough, there's not enough jobs out there, oh my God, the prices are so high, how are we going to get into that? That's exactly what you're going to attract. If you focus on the positives and focus on things that you can control, then you're going to see opportunities. So a big thing about what the youth can do today, we are playing a global game. No longer you're just competing for a job in your own town. It's usually your state, your country, or possibly the world at the moment. But that's then given a bigger space or a bigger sphere for the youth to work with, and a wider range of jobs that they can do now opposed to 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Some points that we touch on the book, and something that's probably relevant to a lot of us, is why educate yourself on financial literacy? Like, why should I do it? Why should I spend the time on doing that? And I suppose we can akin that to driving the car with the brakes on. It's not about in money. It's not about how much you earn. It's more about what you do with what you earn that is the most important. I'm sure we all know those people that seem to earn a fortune but never have any cash. And I'm sure plenty of us have been in that situation where we think we're earning good money and we tend to spend to what we earn rather than the other way around. And I know I've been guilty as charged there, but a few different examples that many of us have probably seen is we get our license when we want that new flash car. We go out and get a car loan for the car, usually at a little bit higher interest rate because we haven't had credit before and it's only being secured by the car itself. So a $30,000 car loan on average interest rates today can cost you up to $40,000 over 5 years. Now, in 5 years' time, the $30,000 car is not worth $30,000 anymore. It's probably worth $15,000. So you've now paid $40,000 for a $15,000 asset. So I'm definitely guilty of that when I was younger, and it's one of the mistakes that I wish I could go back and change. But it's understanding that and understanding what we believe is the eighth wonder of the world, or compound interest. It can either be your best friend or your worst enemy, depending on which side of the fence is it. So the car loan's an example of, it can be an enemy because you're paying more for an asset. The other side where compound interest can be your best friend is if you took, as an example, $10,000. If you invested $10,000 now at an average return of 7% per year. Now, there's a lot of index funds and share funds that will give you 7% consistently, pretty easily. And you add $250 a month to that $10,000. In 25 years, you're going to have yourself $252,000. In 30 years, you're going to have yourself $373,000. So that car loan that you paid $30,000 for, if you saved up and paid cash for it and invested that $10,000, in 25 years, you're going to have $252,000. So I think getting the youth and getting all of us, and that's something that I wish I would have understood a hell of a lot sooner than what I did, is understanding compound interest and putting that to work at a very, very early age. And getting the youth to understand it from both sides. It's not to say that getting that flash car is the wrong decision. It's just to say, do they understand the decision that they're making when they're going into it? What I've got up on the screen now for you is just a content page and what is included in Fly. So first of all, we touch on earning money. So when people get out, the first thing they normally do is get a job. Many of us started working at school, but we go through earning money from a tax perspective, superannuation, which is a very important part. Now, super is probably one of the best examples of compound interest. It's the nest egg that we're going to have when we retire. So the more that we can add to super and the more that we can ensure that we're not having a lot of fees come out of that super, the better off our retirement nest egg is going to be. Budgeting, probably the number one tip from any financial expert is spend less than you earn. Very simple concept, very simple to grasp, not easy to do. So budgeting is 101. We definitely need to be understanding what you're spending. Now, I don't mean drilling down to every cent. I don't mean living on a bag of rice a week and never going out to get a coffee. That's not living in my eyes. But being realistic about what you spend. With budgeting, we cover it in the book. There's a very simple rule of 50, 30, 20. So what we mean by 50, 30, 20 is 50% of your income should be, no more than 50% of your income should be spent on your needs. So the things that you need to survive. That could be rent, that could be food, that could be essential travel to get to work so that you can earn an income, the things that you can't live without. A want is entertainment, going out, extra clothes, etc. And then 20%, ideally, if you can, should be saved or better yet, invested. So just a very simple budgeting tool to try and get you to stick to so that you don't spend more than what you earn. And I think I'm a massive fan of teaching that to kids at a very young age on a simplified version of spend 50%, save 50%. But the earlier we can get that habit in place, the better off I think the youth will be, and all of us will be. Your credit record, or your credit file, it's known as. Protect that like gold. So we've got a mortgage business or a finance business. We see this every day. Credit files have changed these days. It's not only what they call negative reporting, where they report all the bad stuff. It also shows every loan that you've got at the moment, the balance, the limit, and the last 2 years worth of repayments. So there is no hiding anymore. If there's any bad history on there, it's on there. So every time you go for a credit facility, so be it a phone account, a credit card, a zip pay, a home loan, a car loan, the inquiry is noted on your credit file. And the more inquiries you have, sometimes that's frowned upon with lending. So there's a great company called Equifax, that's EQUIFAX. It used to be called Vita, and they hold your credit information. So if you haven't had a look, jump on Equifax on Google, order a copy of your credit file. It's free, and have a look at what's on there. And you can actually set up alerts so that every time someone has a look at your credit file, you get an email to notify them of that. We touch on major purchases like cars. So in the example that I shared before, should you pay cash? Should you get a loan? What's the difference? Property, buying and selling property, that's a major milestone in many people's lives. So things to look out for there. Other investments, shares, managed funds, index funds. We touched briefly on cryptocurrency there, which is obviously pretty hot in the news at the moment. Starting a business. Australia is the land of small business and the land of opportunity. So many people want to get into business. Sometimes it's a fantastic idea. Sometimes people just aren't suited to getting into business. So knowing and understanding at least what you've got to look out for from a business perspective is a great idea before you start. Business can be hard. Yeah, the failure rate in business in Australia is pretty high. Not telling you not to start it, but just be cautious of what you're getting yourself into. Protecting your financial future. So as you go through life, you start building that asset base. What can you do to protect it? Insurance is a big thing. You insure your property, but a lot of people insure their property, but they might not insure their car, and more importantly, insure themselves in case something happens. So knowing what insurance is available, knowing where that sits, either inside or outside your super fund, and what's available to you there is pretty important. And financial hardship. Unfortunately, there's a fair few people that get into financial hardship. Identifying that early, if you're digging the hole, put the shovel down, go and gain help, speak to an expert, speak to a trusted advisor or someone that you trust about, are you in financial hardship and what's the things that you can do to get out of it. I think the awareness around financial hardship is a lot better these days. It only ever used to be done by the lenders, which is a very skewed or very biased approach to it. There's now many great organizations that offer some counseling for that. So, and the last thing is believe in yourself. So I'm a big believer, and we're a big believer in believing in yourself, setting goals and living your best life. So there's points in there, which I'll briefly touch on later, about things that you can do to set yourself up for success for that finance. When will and how will you use the book? Like I mentioned earlier, it is designed like a handbook. So it's not designed something that we pick up and read cover to cover, put down and not look at for the next couple of years. Ideally, we want people referring back to it, to the sections that, as you can see on the slide, that are relevant to you at the time. It's not going to all be relevant initially. For someone later in life, earning money, you've probably got your head around that. Budgeting, I think we can all probably do a little bit better at that. But making sure that you refer back to the section that's relevant to you at the time. So top financial tips is something that I get asked for a fair bit. So what's your top financial tips for anyone, and especially school leavers, about what should I do? What should I do to set myself up for success or make it easy for me? So my top financial tips are, first one is spend less than you earn. So like I said, such a simple concept, not easy to do. If you can, Scott Pape's probably been one of the better ones at it recently, the Barefoot Investor, with his buckets and setting up your income so that really you can't spend more than what you earn. So I think that is simple but not easy. Try and use the 50-30-20 rule. 50% of, no more than 50% of income on your needs, 30% on your wants, but get into that saving or investing as quickly as you possibly can. Set savings or investing goals and reward yourself. As humans, we naturally want a reward. We're pretty simple creatures. We want a reward when we get to a goal. So set yourself some goals, set some realistic goals, start small and build up. You know, setting yourself a goal of saving $150,000 a year for a house may be achievable for some, but for a lot of people, that's unrealistic. So set some realistic goals that you can achieve and reward yourself when you get there. Stay out of credit card debt. So today it's so easy for anyone to get credit through buy now, pay later, Afterpay, Zip Pay, credit cards. They're all over the place. 15, 20 years ago, we had to rock up usually to a bank, talk to the loans officer or the bank manager about getting credit, and you had got dressed up in your best clothes and went in. These days with the internet, you can make a few clicks on your phone, off you go, you've got credit. It's so easy, but it's always a danger paying for today's lifestyle with tomorrow's income. That's fantastic if you've got some good income, but if the income stops, what happens? So be very, very cautious. I'm not saying don't have credit cards. Credit cards can be handy, but just make sure that you've got the money to pay that off. So the world that we live in has got the instant gratification, some discipline around saving for what you want and getting to that savings goal before you buy the item. There's a lot to be said about that, especially when it comes later in life, when you've got the big mortgage and the investment properties and all that other stuff that you need to make sure you're disciplined and you budget for. Monitor your super. So that's a big one. It's a big one that most people forget about. And the reason they do is we don't think of future self as us. It actually seems like another person. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. Ideally with your super fund, have one fund. Don't have multiple funds if you can avoid it. The reason being is you're going to get charged fees at every single fund. Fees at every fund will chew away at your balance. And while it sounds small, you multiply that over the next 30 years, that makes a huge difference to the balance that you're going to have. So review your super fund, make sure ideally you've got one. Make sure you're not getting charged too many fees. There's some great websites out there that do compare the funds. Make sure you're getting good returns, but fees can make a massive, massive difference. And another thing that most people may not understand is a lot of us have insurance with inside our super. While that can be a good strategy, the premiums are being paid from inside our super, which means they're coming out of our super balance each year. So the insurance isn't free, it's being paid, but it's being paid out of our super money. So if you're happy with that, great. But that $1,500, $2,000 a year, $1,000 a year in insurance premiums, once again, you extend that out over 30 years. That's a big difference. So just understand and monitor your super. So look, those tips might not make you Jeff Bezos. It might not make you Mark Zuckerberg in relation to wealth, but it's definitely going to set you on the right path about making sure that you're comfortable. And finance can cause a lot of stress, but being financially literate can give you a lot of peace of mind that you're not driving the car with the brakes on, you're not spinning the wheels, that when you're earning money, it is going to good use. There's a great company called Raise, and they've come up with some interesting statistics, and I'd just like to share them with you. And it's what I mentioned before about our brains and the way our brains are wired about thinking about our future you. So we wanted to try and understand about why it takes so long for many of us, me included, to sacrifice now to gain later. And this study is really interesting because what it said, several studies have revealed that we often treat our future selves like complete strangers. That's one of the reasons we find it hard to choose salad over eating a burger, because we all probably know a nice chicken salad is better for us, but the burger tastes so much better. Yeah, so that's a pretty good example in my eyes because I love food. Our brains are hardwired not to think about future you or future us as us. Studies have also shown that thinking about your current self triggers different brain regions than thinking about your future self. And thinking about your future self actually activates the same area in the brain as when we think about other people. So it's inbuilt in us. This means the brain transmits present and future consequences to different parts of your brain. So when we think now, and we think, hey, I'm only 25. I don't really need to worry about my super. I'm not going to see it for the next 40 years. Who cares? It does make a huge, huge difference if you understand that and you put some priority in that. And we as humans prefer a definite solution rather than an indefinite solution. And an example of that, you ask a child, would you like one marshmallow now or two marshmallows tomorrow? I can guarantee you they will all take the one marshmallow now because it's a definite option. So that's some interesting facts about how our brains are wired, but also why a lot of us find it hard to financially sacrifice now and not spend the money on today's lifestyle, but invest it into our future self. Now, guys, there's only a couple of you here, so I'd love a few of you here, sorry. So I'd love to throw a question out there, and whoever can get this right, so put the answer up in the chat. Genevieve can tell me who gets the closest. I mentioned earlier, and if you get the question, or the closest to the question, I'll send a copy of the book to you in the mail. So I mentioned before that the current household debt to income ratio as a percentage. Can anyone tell me what that household debt to income ratio was? So if you throw it up in the chat, Genevieve, if you let us know what the answers are, and
Davina has said 190.
She's bang on. Well done. Well done. Well done. Listening well. So here's a good thing from Albert Einstein. He's a pretty smart man. A clever person solves a problem, a wise person avoids it. So we think that's very relevant when it comes to finance and finance problems. It's a lot easier to avoid a finance problem than be in the middle of it and trying to solve it. And some basic principles can help you avoid those problems. So I spoke about the 10 tips earlier and the things that we cover in the book. And I'll just go over those quickly now with you. Tip one is care about the future you. We touched on that briefly about being it hard in our brain to relate to the future you, but care about the future you. Have a look at your super, think about what you're doing with your money now, and can that be invested in the future? I'm not saying don't live a good life. We've got to enjoy it. We're here once, but definitely care about that future you. With your goals, write them down. There's some massive studies about links between the brain and physically writing a goal down and the likelihood of achieving that goal. So I'm a massive fan of writing that down. That's why when we initially first went to publish Fly, we actually didn't want it as an audio book or an ebook. We wanted paperbook only or hard copy only, so that people would pick it up like a handbook and would refer back to it. Find your supportive tribe. So definitely find people that you can go and turn to. Find people that you trust. That may be family, that may be friends, that may be people that you admire, mentors, whatever that is. But find people that are going to support your journey, because there's plenty of people out there that love helping and love sharing their ideas. Embrace fear. Fear is going to hit us in all walks of life, but especially in the finance area. Getting into your first property, investing in those shares, maybe putting a bit more into super and cutting back your income a little bit. Embrace that fear and move forward, but just do your research and make sure you're making that right decision first. Tip 5, be collaborative. If you don't know something, ask. ask someone that's in the game. You know, if you're buying a property and you don't know about the market, go and talk to as many real estate agents as you can. They will chew your ear off, and they will tell you lots of information about the market that can be very handy. Tip 6, if you're young and you're starting to build up, know your worth. The whole learning before earning, I'm a massive fan of. So hone your skills in your industry. But once you've got those skills, know your worth. So know that your time is valuable, your time is worthwhile, and valuing your time will ensure that you've got the resources to invest that where you want to invest it. Know where your money goes. That's back to the budgeting thing. Don't just blindly spend money. I'm sure there's many times in our life we all look at our bank account and say, where did that go? Mine goes to horses, as Genevieve sort of mentioned before. Tip 8 is leverage. So as you develop in life, don't be scared of leverage. It's very hard to save your way to a fortune. Leverage can be your best friend. So borrowing money to buy a jet ski or a motorbike, usually the most of the time is not a good idea because we know that's a depreciating asset. Borrowing money to buy a property or a business that makes you more money or shares, that can be fantastic because that increases your return. So a lot of people are scared of debt. Their number one goal is to get out of debt. Debt can be fantastic. It can increase your returns. Many wealthy people are in a lot of debt. They're just in debt that makes them more money. So don't be scared of leverage. Tip 9, spread your risk. Now, take this with a grain of salt because spreading risk doesn't mean going out and doing as many things as you possibly can. I'm not advising you to do that at all. And many of us spread risk just by living every day. And our super's usually invested in the share market. So knowing and understanding where your super goes is a good idea. A lot of people own their own home or aspire to own your own home. You're in the property market. That's spreading that against the property market. And if you're furthering your career or developing your business, then you're in all basically those 3 spheres. So just know and understand where you are and make sure that you've got investments in those to push forward. And be patient, but be opportunistic. So wealth does take a long time. A lot of us get very patient. Very rarely does someone crack it like Facebook, like Atlassian. It's one in a million stories or 1 in a billion. So it does take time. Saving takes time. Compound interest does take time. But the earlier you start, the better the result will be. So if you're a parent and you can get your kids to start saving and start investing at a young age, fantastic. Do it. While it might be only small, the habit of doing it will set them up for a great opportunity later on in life. So look, thank you for listening. I don't want to go too much more through the book. I hope that's given you a bit of a brief overview of what's in there. If you don't have the book, this is a great place to get it. But if you do have the book and you want to share it with friends, family, please do so. Share it with as many people as you can because we'd love the message to get out there, and we'd love ideally to lift the whole financial literacy thing, not only at home, but also in schools, which is something we're working on. So thanks again. And if you got any questions, please reach out or please throw them in the chat now.
Oh, thank you so much, Jai. That was wonderful. And just, I think looking through the book, it is so, I don't know. Actually, do you mind perhaps to stop screen sharing?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, not at all. But just looking through the book, everything is so accessible, exactly as you said, as a handbook. You can just like kind of tap into anything and feel like you can understand it. Which I think basically, I don't know if you could see me. As you said, at nearly everything, I was like, that's a sensible idea. I was actually interested, I don't know if you avoid this, but do you have any like particular super funds you recommend? Or is that something that is really personal?
Oh, look, it is really personal. I'm not I don't practice financial planning. I do have my diploma of financial planning, but I don't practice. So look, super funds, definitely research it. Yeah, your biggest thing is fees. There's a lot of the finance experts. Warren Buffett, probably one of them. Everyone seems to know Warren Buffett. He's the world's greatest investor. He's actually written and been very publicized of it to say if he passes, his wife's money or his wife's estate is being invested in an index fund. So an index fund just holds the top shares in the market. So it might be the top 200 in Australia or the top 500 in America. And it follows that market and gives returns based on that. So that's a very, very simple, low cost way of doing it. But obviously every person's different. I've got to give the disclaimer in front of that about get your own advice, make sure you do your own research. But definitely have a look at your super, have a look where it's invested, and have a look at the management fees you're being charged. And what the other options are out there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I was also wondering if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to unmute or to write them in the chat. But I was wondering, how do you approach talking about finance with your kids?
Yeah, it's like finance is typically very taboo in households. So it was when I was growing up, it was never really spoken about. And you're a kid, you don't need to worry about that. And that was, I'm sure, out of love from my parents to say, hey, you're a kid, don't stress about it. But we're very open with our kids about it. They get pocket money every week. They have to do their jobs. If they don't do their jobs, they don't get their pocket money. If they want anything extra that they want to buy, so they want a little toy, or they can go out and they've already eaten and they want another ice cream. I said, that's great. You got to buy it yourself. So we've got cards for them. They've got bank accounts. We take their cards everywhere. If they want something, they can go and pay. When we go to cafes, we bring them with us and we get them to understand how much it costs. The first reaction from a 9-year-old when they see that breakfast was $80 is, does it always cost that much? So just getting our kids to understand it, not so much so they stress about it, but just so that they understand what items cost and they can relate that back to, if they get $10 a week or $20 a week or whatever the kids get, and breakfast was costing $80, they start to realize that, so I think having those conversations early, and in those tips that I mentioned before, setting savings targets with them. So if they want a new surfboard or a new motorbike or whatever it is, new car, obviously first car is a big one, but setting realistic savings targets and helping them along the way to get that goal.
And how do you kind of work out what something that's like something they should be saving for versus being covered by the household?
Oh, look, I think special items that kids want, like every kid wants something new these days. If it's an iPad or a bike or whatever it is, if there's something they need for school or need for their life or their schooling, I think that should be a family provided thing personally. But if it's something extra, if it's a gaming machine, if it's a surfboard, you can tell I've got boys, or whatever it is, I think if that's an extra item and they really want it and it's a need, it's not a need, it's a want, then set a savings target with them. My 9-year-old wants a motorbike at the moment. And I said, well, mate, you save half, I'll put in the other half. And he's aiming for that at the moment. He's asked all the family, please, thank you. If you want to give me any presents, can you please help me with this? So, and then I said, you get your pocket money, but if you can add some more value around the house and do some more jobs, then there's a chance to earn more. I think paint's almost gone off my car the amount of times he's offered to wash it, but it's good that they start doing those things and start understanding that if they add more value, then usually the return gets more. And that's what we all see in our businesses or in our work at the moment. The more value we add, the more reward we get.
Yeah. Oh, great. Thank you. I guess I'm a little bit interested. I have a few questions, so I'll just keep on going.
Sure.
I was kind of interested for you personally writing a book as an obviously you've done had a lot of different hats on, but were there any particular challenges or anything interesting you found in process of writing?
Oh, look, I'm very lucky. My wife's a lawyer by trade and she is very, very detailed. So she keeps me in line most of the time. I'm very lucky that I had her to piece it all together. So with the book, it was a team effort. The three of us got together. There's the wife who's a solicitor by trade, a journalist who helped us do a hell of a lot of the writing, the bulk of it. And then there's me who came in with the finance expertise, I suppose to say. So we all put the book together. Initially, it wasn't nowhere near as big as it is. It's over 300 pages now. But every time we got down one part, one subject, we found more that we said we can't not include this and we can't not include that. And especially with the world changing so fast, buy now, pay later, or what most people know is Afterpay, Zip Pay, etc. That's become so big. Crypto's become so big. So initially things like that weren't in the book, but they're way too important to leave out. So I think just making sure that we covered the stuff that we thought we wanted to know. How do you rent a property? How do you get a phone bill? What happens if you don't pay a phone bill? There's things in there like when do you consider the de facto relationship, and what happens with assets when you split up? Things like that a lot of us have been involved with and knew absolutely nothing about until we learned from our mistakes. So hopefully this can aid in just some education, or at least where to turn to get that information, so you know.
Yeah, like giving language to all the normal things that are somehow mystical, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I think a big push for us is to try and lift the financial literacy or financial education in schools. I definitely by no means do I think it's the teachers' fault. They do an amazing job. They've got no time as it is. And it's definitely not the teacher's job on their own. I think parents are just as responsible. But I would love to see, we all learn English, but we don't learn all the things that we're going to run into in life unless we're financially minded and we take one of those subjects like economics or business or something like that. So I would love to see that as a compulsory subject in schools, so that at least when they come out of schools, kids know what their credit file is. They know what renting a property is, and that what they have to put a bond down, and if they don't pay their bond, they're on a blacklist. Like, they know all this sort of stuff that they're definitely going to run into over the coming years.
Yeah. Oh, marvelous. Well, thank you so much. Okay. I know certainly now after your talk, I am taking this copy home. It's kind of all the little things that I'm aware that I don't know, but I don't quite know how to know.
Yeah. I think. And that's what the book is. It references everywhere. It tells you where you have to go to find the information. We've tried to keep the book as timeless as possible in relation to pointing you to the different areas that you need to go to, rather than stating year-on-year facts. So it definitely will give you a guide of where to go.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much, Jai. We've just got a few messages that have come in and saying thanks. I'm not sure if you can see them, but we've got Davina saying, yeah, such great advice here. Wish I'd had this when I was young. Thank you, and all the best.
Me too.
And Sarah saying her 13-year-old has been watching and nodding away. Thank you.
Yeah. Perfect.
Well, thank you all very much for joining us this evening. And thank you so much, Jai. And best of luck. And I really look forward to seeing and hearing how you go with working with schools. That sounds marvelous.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks a lot for your time, everyone, and have a good night.
Good night.